Yes, I'm with Theresa Hubbard, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified hypnotherapist. And before we broke for our commercial, we were talking a little bit about compassion fatigue, and I think it was so beautiful, as you said, Theresa, that you tell your clients no matter what time of day you are with them, you are present with them, and it really was lovely to hear that. And it sounds like this work fills you up and fills your heart up. And would you say that's why you're able to have this ability to let it, move through you?
Yes. It is my passion.
Oh, I love that.
To be there for people, to be present for them, for them to feel safe and really okay with who they are, to have someone that they can trust and be connected to.
Yes.
To teach them how to be connected to the people that are really important to them in their life.
I love that, because I think it's also difficult for so many of us when we are working, we're healers or we're counselors or however you want to put it, that learning to hold and preserve that energy is so very important. And I think a lot of us, especially for those individuals, I get a lot of them in my work that are sensitive. And so it's almost like a slow bleed sometimes, they have trouble holding on to that power. So I love hearing that. And I want to move on because, boy, I tell you, you are multifaceted. There's so many pieces of you that I want to touch on. I want to move into trauma because you're such an expert there. I would love it if you could give us a little bit. I know that this might be difficult for you. If you don't want to, I totally respect that. But your story will lead us into a little bit of this, lead us into the trauma concept, if you don't mind sharing your loss.
Sure. And it is difficult to speak about. I did suffer PTSD as a result and got wonderful help from a therapist here in Kansas City when I realized that I had PTSD. But in 2006, I was pregnant, and the very short story is I got an infection that crossed the placenta and killed the baby, and then in turn almost killed me. And I was in post-op recovering from the DNC, which they did after they realized that the baby had died. And it was in post-op that I started bleeding out, and I was awake and aware of what was happening. And for me, that was my moment of learning true surrender and realizing that when I'm working with clients on their trauma, how difficult it is for us to reach that place of really surrendering. But I work with them on that, and again, it is about having trust and faith in the people that you're working with, to hold that space for you, to hold your heart, really, and your hope as you're working through those things in your life that have been so devastating for you.
And what a gift you are, Theresa, to people, because being able to be with them, really be present, is truly a gift. And would you say that experience, I mean, it sounds like it to me, but it so shaped you into the expert that you are in dealing with trauma?
I think it was a big catalyst for me beginning my self-work. I believe that being present with people was something that I was born with, a gift, obviously that for me that God gave me.
Yes.
But realizing at that point that I could do so much more, that I could understand myself so much better, that I could be more clear in who I am, and as connected to other people and as separate from other people. And so it really, for me, was a catalyst for my journey to do my own really deep self-work, which I constantly am doing, my own.
Yes. Yes, it is lifelong learning, isn't it?
Yes.
We're always in process, I say.
Yes.
We're never quite done.
No,
Well,
no.
well, so for people out there that are connecting with your story and we're thinking about, this concept and moving into trauma, that's a big area too. What is considered trauma as far as your work goes?
Oh, well, for me, what I consider trauma is really any event that happens in our life that speaks to our experience in such a way that it stops us, that we get stuck. And, I think about, we can talk about really big traumas that have happened in the news, but I know from working with clients and I've worked with clients that have been involved in some of our bigger, well-known traumas. But not everybody experiences those the same way. Not everybody has PTSD from experiencing those things. Mm-hmm. And it's really understanding that each individual person's story determines whether something is traumatic for them or not.
That's a good way to put it, too, because I can imagine as you're saying that, and I see it with couples, too, where their perception is so, well, why? That's not a big deal. Get over it.
Right.
But boy,
yes.
to that individual, it's huge. It's just
huge.
Like our teenagers,
Yes.
we think, get over it.
Right. And that's exactly right. And I tell people, our body is this huge sensory organ. We don't think about it like that, but its job is our survival. And it is always our body and our brain and our mind is always picking up all this information, and it's doing that to prepare us for what's going to happen next. And what happens if we judge it wrong?
Yes.
And depending on what the wrong thing is, whatever it is, maybe it's, driving, maybe it's relationship, maybe it's work, it can be very, very traumatic for us.
And I like how you put that because, again, as a reminder for all of the listeners out there, I think we aren't aware of how powerful the body-mind system is and how it is so sensitive to every single thing. Not to mention, I would love to get in, but I don't know that we'll have time, to the subconscious mind that's just clicking away, taking in everything, right?
Yes.
And do you feel like I find a lot that in our world, maybe partly because we're so plugged in, partly because we're not super emotionally intelligent, whatever it may be, that sometimes our head is over here and our body's over here, not recognizing the beautiful union that the body-mind has, the synchronistic,
Yes, very much so. I think that's very common.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And boy, does that affect trauma, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, depending, again, on the person and what level of health they were, functioning at before the trauma happened, is very indicative of how quickly they're able to resolve their trauma. Mm-hmm. Do they practice mindfulness already? Do they, have coping mechanisms in place? I mean, the people that have the longest trauma recovery, in my experience, in my practice, are the people that don't have effective coping mechanisms in place. There isn't a connection already between their mind and their body.
Mm-hmm. And so do you find that often, whether it's PTSD or they're just experiencing, or they've just experienced a trauma, that what is happening, what they're reliving is manifesting in their body to a certain degree, maybe with illness or even with some symptoms? Do you try to encourage them to see that connection sometimes? Is it that obvious?
Definitely. When I'm working with clients, and particularly in hypnotherapy, we're working on, we may start with an experience that happened that was traumatic. but we're always moving into the emotional experience. What emotion are you feeling, and where are you feeling it in your body? And it's often very difficult for people to make that connection until they really start to work on it. Oh, it's in my stomach. Oh, it's in my throat. Oh my gosh, I just realized my jaw is clenched completely. Or that's where I get those migraines. It's right there. So there is a disconnection about that, and I work with people on that all the time.
And boy, isn't it powerful when they make that connection.
Yes. Yes.
It's an aha moment, isn't it?
Yes, and for some people, that awareness allows them the ability to release some of that, which is very powerful.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yes, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I had that in my own experience. Was I had been on, one of those stomach acid medicines. I can't remember now which one it was. And as I started doing my own work, within about 2 weeks of understanding where I carried so much of my guilt, which was in my gut, I haven't had to take a pill since. And it's been years.
I love that, Theresa. I love that you shared that, because I see that all the time in my work as well. And I think if we are gentle with people and helping them discover this connection, knowing how to just move through it in a delicate way, when people connect it, wow, I love that you were able to make that, because what we're thinking does affect not only our body, but also our reality. And we're going to go to another break. And I do want to move into a little bit of your hypnotherapy, because I know that you work in a heart-centered type of hypnotherapy as opposed to this traditional way. And I want you to share that a little bit with people, because we need to learn a little bit more about the subconscious mind. And when we come back, we're going to get more into that. So get ready to learn about the subconscious mind, and go to TheresaHubbard.com, and we'll be back.